It was a Christmas season a long time ago. John, a boy around 8 or 10 years old, was so excited, counting the days to Christmas. Like most kids, he loved Christmas because of the shiny, wrapped presents waiting under the tree. He lived with his parents, brother, and sister in a small, warm house with 2 floors. Every year, his family turned their home into a Christmas wonderland, full of lights, decorations, and a huge Christmas tree standing tall in the living room. On Christmas Eve, the family did what they always did. They visited John's grandparents, where everyone told funny stories and laughed together. Later, they went home to get ready for Christmas Day, which they would spend at John's uncle's house. That night, the house became very quiet as everyone went to bed. But John couldn't fall asleep. He was too excited, imagining all the surprises waiting for him in the morning. Finally, he got so tired that he closed his eyes and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, John woke up. His eyes opened, and he saw the red numbers on his clock glowing. 2 a.m. He turned over, trying to sleep again, but then he heard something. It was a soft sound, almost like footstep coming from downstairs. At that time, he froze and listened closely. He was wondering, was it real, or was he just dreaming? In that house, John's bedroom was close to the stairs, so he could just barely hear the noise. His curiosity was stronger than his fear. Quietly, he got out of bed, trying not to wake anyone. He tiptoed to the railing that let him see into the living room. The twinkling lights from the Christmas tree made the room glow softly. Everything looked normal at first, start from the decorations were shining, and the presents were still under the tree. Then he saw it. Someone stepped out from behind the big Christmas tree. John froze. His heart felt like it stopped for a moment. It wasn't his dad or his brother. It was a stranger. The lights were too dim to see the man's face clearly, but John could tell he was thin and wearing dark clothes. The stranger moved quietly, not noticing that John was watching from upstairs. John didn't wait. His legs moved before he even thought about it. He turned and ran as fast as he could down the hallway, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. He reached his parents' room, pushed the door open, and shook his dad awake. There, he told his dad that there's someone in the house. Moments later, John's dad woke up, still sleepy but alarmed, and quickly got out of bed. He quietly went downstairs while John and the rest of the family stayed together in the bedroom, waiting nervously. Each minute felt like forever. Finally, John's dad came back. His face was pale, and he spoke softly. The man had run away, slipping out through the living room window. The police came soon after to check the house. They discovered that a window in the living room had been broken, but it was done so quietly that no one in the house heard it happen. Nothing seemed to be missing, and the officers guessed the stranger got scared when he saw John and ran away. Even though nothing was stolen, the whole experience was frightening. John couldn't forget the shadowy figure moving behind the Christmas tree. For weeks, every tiny noise in the house at night made his heart race. Questions filled his mind. Who was the man? Why did he come into their house? And what could have happened if John hadn't woken up? No one ever found out the answers. That Christmas Eve, which should have been filled with happiness and excitement, became a night John would never forget. Even as the years went by, the memory stayed with him, and it's a reminder of that strange and scary night that changed how he felt about the holidays forever. It was a cold evening in December, just a few weeks before Christmas. Mickey was caught up in the holiday excitement. He had a long list of gifts to buy for his friends and family, so he went to a big mall near his house. The mall was busy with people shopping for Christmas, the air filled with cheerful music and the sounds of bustling crowds. At that time, Mickey moved from one store to another, picking out presents and crossing them off his list. After hours of shopping, he finally finished. Tired but happy, he walked to his car with bags full of gifts and carefully placed them in the back seat. On the way home, everything seemed normal. The highway was busy with cars, and the lights from the vehicles reflected on the wet road. Mickey felt relaxed as he drove, happy that his shopping was done. But then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and saw a number he didn't recognize. He decided not to answer and let the call go to voicemail. A few minutes later, Mickey decided to listen to the voicemail. As he played it, his heart began to race. The voice on the message was calm and quiet, but it sounded like it was teasing him. The message said that Mickey should have answered the call because the person was driving right behind him. Mickey's eyes shot to his rearview mirror. At that time, a car was behind him, its headlights bright and steady. He didn't know how long it had been following him. Maybe it had been there for miles, or maybe it had just appeared. Mickey tried to stay calm, thinking it could be a prank. But deep down, he felt uneasy, his mind racing with questions. Soon after, Mickey turned off the highway onto a quiet road, hoping to feel safer. But the car behind him followed. His stomach tightened with fear. He turned onto an even smaller street, but the car followed again. That's when he realized that someone was following him. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he tried to think of what to do. Then he remembered something he had heard before. If you're being followed, go to a police station. He quickly asked his phone for directions. The station wasn't far, but every second felt like forever. Mickey kept looking in his rearview mirror, and the car stayed right behind him, like a shadow he couldn't escape. Just before he reached the police station, the car suddenly turned and disappeared into the night. Mickey felt a wave of relief as he drove into the police station's parking lot. He stayed in his car for a moment, watching the road to make sure the strange car wasn't coming back. When everything seemed safe, he finally left the station and headed home. As he drove through his neighborhood, he started to feel better. The sight of his driveway brought comfort. But as soon as Mickey parked, his phone rang. It was the same number. His heart sank. Even though he didn't want to, he answered the call. Then, the same creepy voice came through the phone, calm and cold. It said Mickey shouldn't have gone to the police station and should have just gone straight home. At that moment, fear washed over Mickey as the sound of a car engine grew louder. He turned toward the street and saw headlights coming around the corner. The car slowly crept down the road and stopped right in his driveway, blocking his own car. Mickey's heart pounded as he rushed to the front door, fumbling with his keys in the dark. With shaking hands, he managed to unlock the door and slam it shut just as the car door behind him opened. Quickly, he locked the door and called the police, his hands trembling as he dialed. From the living room, Mickey peeked out the front window. A man was standing on the porch, his shadowy figure lit by the glow of the porch light. The man knocked loudly on the door and tried the doorknob, but it didn't move. He stayed still, not leaving, just standing there. Mickey's phone buzzed again, the same number flashing on the screen. He didn't answer, too scared to hear that chilling voice again. Time dragged as Mickey waited for the police to arrive. Every minute felt like forever. The man didn't move from the porch, his stillness making the situation even scarier. Finally, flashing red and blue lights appeared, breaking the darkness. The man turned to face the police as they arrived, his face calm and unreadable. There, the officers talked to the man for a while before giving him a citation and taking him away. Mickey stayed inside, watching from a safe distance, his heart still racing. Even after the man was gone, the fear didn't leave. At that time, Mickey couldn't stop thinking about the man. He didn't understand how the man had gotten his phone number or how he knew where Mickey lived. It felt like the man had been watching him for a long time. These thoughts stayed in his mind, making him feel uneasy for a long time. That night, Mickey could hardly sleep. Every little creak in the house made his heart race. and he kept imagining the stranger on his porch. Even though the man never came back, the scary experience stayed with Mickey. The holidays, which used to feel magical and full of joy, now felt different. The memory of that unsettling night made Mickey feel nervous, even when everything seemed safe. Mickey couldn't stop thinking about the man. He wondered who the stranger was, what he wanted, and why he had picked Mickey's house. These thoughts stayed with him, making him feel uneasy for a long time. For the past few years, Alex and his wife had been the ones to host Christmas at their house. Their home was perfect for the celebration because it was big, with lots of space and a large backyard that bordered a quiet forest. They had decorated the house beautifully, and by Christmas morning, everything looked festive and ready for the special day. Family members began arriving around 11 a.m., and the day was off to a great start. Alex welcomed his relatives, chatted with them, and made sure everyone felt at home. But around 11:30, something unusual happened. One of Alex's cousins arrived, but instead of looking cheerful, he seemed a bit uneasy. As Alex greeted him, the cousin mentioned seeing someone in the backyard. He explained that the figure had been near the edge of the woods. Alex felt puzzled. No one was supposed to be outside, and he couldn't think of any reason why someone would be in the backyard. His cousin pointed toward the trees, showing where he had spotted the person. Alex stared at the woods, his mind racing with questions about who it could have been and why they were there. When Alex's cousin arrived, he explained that he had seen someone near the trees in the backyard. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed a figure walking along the tree line. At first, he thought it might have been Alex, but then he realized it wasn't. He had stepped out of his car and moved closer to the backyard, but the person walked away and disappeared into the woods. Alex felt uneasy as he listened. He and his cousin decided to check it out together. They walked through the backyard toward the spot near the trees. In the snow, they found fresh footprints leading into the woods. The tracks were clear, but the person was gone. Alex called out toward the trees, his voice carrying into the quiet, but there was no reply. For a while, they stood there, looking into the stillness of the woods, hoping to see something. But there was no sign of the man. With nothing more to do, they returned to the house. The strange moment stayed in Alex's thoughts, but soon the cheerful bustle of Christmas helped him push it aside. The hours passed as the celebration continued. Laughter and chatter filled the house, and Alex found himself enjoying the day despite the odd event earlier. But later that afternoon, as he walked by a window that overlooked the backyard, something made him stop. There at the edge of the woods, just beyond the tree line, the man was standing again. Alex froze as he stared out the window, trying to see the man more clearly. The figure was too far away to recognize, but something about the way he stood and moved felt strange and unsettling. Alex shouted to get his cousin's attention, his voice cutting through the cheerful noise of the house. His cousin rushed over just as the man turned, looking briefly toward the house before suddenly running back into the woods. Alex's cousin confirmed it was the same man he had seen earlier. Together, they stood by the window, watching for several minutes, but the man didn't come back. With no sign of danger, Alex decided to return to the celebration, though he couldn't fully relax. His eyes kept drifting to the window, and the woods outside seemed darker and more mysterious. As the evening went on and family members began to leave, Alex and his wife found themselves alone in the house. They spent the rest of the night glancing out the windows now and then, but the man never appeared again. By the time they went to bed, Alex felt a small sense of relief, though the memory of the man and the woods lingered in his mind. The next morning, Alex's sense of relief vanished. When he stepped outside to check the backyard, he noticed something that made his heart drop. Fresh footprints marked the snow and its tracks that hadn't been there the day before. They were clear and led from the woods all the way to the back door of the house. Alex bent down to look closer, his stomach tightening. The tracks didn't stop at the door. Instead, they turned around and headed back into the woods. It felt like a blast of icy wind hit Alex. Someone, most likely the same man, had come right up to the house during the night. The idea sent shivers down his spine. The thought of the man walking so close to his home made Alex feel nervous and exposed, as if the stranger had been watching or waiting for something for the next few days. Alex was on edge. He checked every lock on the doors and windows, constantly peeked through the curtains at the slightest sound, and woke up in the middle of the night, his heart racing. Even though the man never returned and nothing strange happened again, Alex couldn't shake the uneasiness. The thought of the man lingered in Alex's mind. The image of footprints leading to his door and back to the woods haunted him. He kept thinking about why the man had been in the backyard, what he had been doing, and what he might have wanted. These unanswered thoughts stayed with Alex, turning what should have been a joyful holiday into a memory filled with worry and mystery. It was a chilly evening in December, just a few weeks before Christmas. Niley decided it was the perfect time to put up the family's Christmas lights. His wife and their 2 kids were out visiting her best friend, who had children the same age as theirs. Before leaving, she had asked Niley to decorate the house, knowing how much their kids would love coming home to a brightly lit house. Excited to make the house look magical, Niley started working as soon as he got home from work. The yard was covered in soft snow from earlier in the week, but the weather wasn't too cold, making it a great night for decorating. He began with the yard, setting up cheerful displays like reindeer, Santa's sleigh, and other fun decorations. Once that was done, he moved on to the hanging lights on the roof. Carrying a ladder, Niley carefully climbed up and started stringing the lights around the house. He made sure to decorate the front and sides, then moved to the back to finish. The night was peaceful, with only the soft rustle of wind in the trees. As he worked on the far end of the roof, the quiet was suddenly broken by a noise from below. Then Niley stopped what he was doing and listened closely. The sound wasn't the wind or an animal, and it was footsteps crunching in the snow. His heart began to race. Looking toward the backyard, he saw a man standing at the edge of the property. Niley didn't recognize him. The man wasn't a neighbor or anyone familiar. Dressed in dark clothes, the stranger looked out of place. Niley felt uneasy, and his worry grew as the man started walking closer to the house. Before Niley could do anything, the man suddenly ran toward the ladder leaning against the side of the house. Niley's heart sank as he realized there was no way to stop him. In one swift motion, the man pushed the ladder over, leaving Niley stuck on the roof. Panic filled him as he watched the stranger head toward the back door of the house. Then, Niley remembered something that made his stomach drop, that he had left the back door unlocked while decorating. The man disappeared into the house, and Niley couldn't do anything but watch. Thankfully, he had his phone in his pocket. With shaking hands, he quickly called 911 and explained what was happening, hoping help would arrive soon. Stuck on the roof, Niley had no choice but to wait. He shouted into the house, warning the intruder that the police were on their way, hoping to scare him off. But the house stayed quiet, and the silence made Niley's mind race. He imagined the man rummaging through their things, or doing something worse. Minutes felt like hours until, suddenly, the man burst out of the house. He ran through the backyard at full speed and jumped over the fence, disappearing into the darkness. Niley tried to keep his eyes on him, but the man was gone too quickly. It didn't look like he had taken anything big, but Niley couldn't be sure if something small was missing or if there was damage inside. Relief washed over Niley when the police arrived soon after. They set up the ladder and helped him climb down safely before checking the house and the area around it. To Niley's surprise, the house was untouched. Nothing was broken, and nothing seemed to be missing. The officers assured him they would patrol the neighborhood in case the man came back, but without more information, there wasn't much else they could do. Even though he was still shaken, Niley decided to finish putting up the Christmas lights. He wanted everything to be ready and perfect for his kids when they got home. By the time his wife and children returned, the house was glowing with bright, festive lights. Niley didn't tell them about what had happened, wanting to keep the holiday spirit alive for his family. The next few days passed quietly, with nothing strange happening. The man never returned, and the reason for his odd behavior remained unclear. Niley couldn't stop thinking about the incident. He kept wondering what the man had been doing in the house and what he might have been looking for. These thoughts stayed in his mind, with no answers to ease his worries. A year later, it was time to decorate the house for Christmas again. Niley climbed the ladder and carefully hung the lights along the roofline. As he worked, he couldn't help but glance toward the backyard from time to time. The memory of that strange night still lingered, a faint shadow over the cheerful holiday spirit. This year, everything went smoothly. The decorations went up without any problems, and the house shone brightly with festive lights. But even as Niley admired the glowing display, a quiet unease lingered in his heart. The memory of that night served as a reminder of how quickly things could change and how fragile the feeling of safety could be. It was Christmas Eve, and 22-year-old Pierre had just finished his shift at a department store in the city. This year was different for Pierre. Instead of joining his family at his uncle's house for their usual holiday gathering, he had chosen to work. The job offered extra pay for working on Christmas Eve, but it meant missing out on the festive celebration with everyone. By the time the store closed at 8 p.m., Pierre was exhausted. He drove home, knowing he would be spending the evening alone at his parents' house, where he still lived. The drive took about 30 minutes, and as he arrived, the quiet street shimmered with a light layer of snow. When he stepped inside, the house was warm and welcoming. He quickly texted his parents to let them know he was home, and they replied that they'd stay at his uncle's house until midnight. The house was very quiet as Pierre made himself a simple meal. After eating, he decided to relax with a movie in the living room. The night was calm, and everything seemed normal until just after 11 p.m., when the peaceful silence was broken by a loud, sharp banging at the front door. The sudden noise startled Pierre, shattering the stillness of the house. At that moment, Pierre froze as the loud banging sent a wave of fear through him. It wasn't a regular knock because it was loud, rough, and constant, as if someone was trying to force their way inside. For a few moments, he couldn't move, fear holding him still. Finally, he gathered enough courage to do something. He quietly went upstairs to a window that overlooked the front porch. Pulling back the curtain just a little, Pierre saw 3 big men standing at the door. They were dressed in dark jackets and hats, their faces hidden in the shadows. One of them raised his fist and pounded on the door again, the sound echoing through the house. Pierre's heart raced as panic set in. He quickly ducked away from the window, his mind racing with questions. He didn't know who these men were or why they were at his house. Grabbing his phone, he called his parents, his voice shaky as he told them what was happening. His parents were just as confused as he was. His mother told him to call the police if the men didn't leave. She and Pierre's dad promised to come home right away, but it would take them 45 minutes to get there. Suddenly, the banging stopped. Pierre felt a moment of relief. thinking the men might have left. But when he peeked out the window again, his stomach dropped. The three men were no longer at the front door. They were walking around the side of the house, heading toward the backyard. At that time, Pierre ran quickly down the hallway to a window that looked out over the backyard. He saw the men just as they reached the back of the house. Moments later, he heard the sound of a doorknob rattling, followed by loud bangs. They were trying to get in. His heart racing, Pierre grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His hands trembled as he explained everything to the dispatcher. They assured him that the police were on their way, but Pierre knew it would take time for them to arrive. He tried to stay calm, but the loud banging on the doors made his fear grow. Then, suddenly everything went silent. Pierre froze. He didn't know if the men had left or if they were planning something else. Before he could figure it out, a new noise shattered the quiet and its loud bangs on one of the back windows. He could hear the glass creaking under the force. Panic surged through him as he realized the window might break. Just as his fear reached its peak, Pierre heard the sound of a car engine pulling into the driveway. Red and blue lights flashed outside, reflecting on the walls. The police had arrived. Relief washed over him as he knew help was finally there. Then, Pierre slowly peeked out the window, just in time to see the men running away. As soon as they realized the police had arrived, they bolted, sprinting across the backyard. They jumped over the fence and disappeared into the darkness. The quiet road behind the house gave them an easy way to escape, and within seconds, they were gone. The police arrived and quickly searched the property, making sure everything was safe. Pierre told them what had happened, but since he hadn't seen the men's faces clearly, it would be hard to find them. When Pierre's parents finally came home, he felt a huge wave of relief. It was comforting not to be alone anymore. The rest of the night was tense. Even though the men didn't come back, Pierre and his parents stayed on high alert. They double-checked all the locks and looked out the windows at every little noise. None of them could relax completely. To this day, Pierre still doesn't know who the men were or what they wanted. Maybe they were trying to steal something, or perhaps their intentions were much worse. These unanswered thoughts stayed with him long after that Christmas Eve, casting a shadow over what should have been a peaceful and joyful holiday.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.